welcome to another Zelda podcast. I'm David, and today I am joined with my becoming regular co-host, Kady Roberts. Kady, how are you?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm well. I'm super excited because we are participating in a very exciting event right now. And may I ask you to tell our audience kind of what's going on?
Yeah, so we have journeyed out here to Moss's house, kind of like the hub of Zelda Dungeon.
Yeah,
And
it's like the land of Zelda Dungeon.
It's really cool here. And we are kind of just with a lot of other content creators and kind of collaborating in their big stream. It's
No child.
No kid hungry.
No kid hungry.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. No Kid Hungry is the charity that we're kind of trying to raise money for.
Absolutely. A year ago, Andy Spiteri of the Zeldacast reached out to me and invited me to join Zelda Dungeon for their marathon last year for a Zeldacast episode. And it was so much fun that we also flipped it around, and Al and Andy joined me for another Zelda podcast episode. So this year, Mazis and Andy and Al, everybody reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to hang out with us again for another year?" And I said, "Well, this time let's come for more than just a morning. Let's try to do a couple days." Mm-hmm. So we're hanging out here, being part of the marathon, and the voices that you're hearing right now are Al and Andy, because guys, we are back in the same room that we were a year ago.
Woo!
Maz's office. He's been very graceful, and he's allowed us to record in here because I understand during the marathon this is a little bit more of a no-go zone.
Yeah, we're not allowed in here, but he was very gracious enough to let us in here to record because it's the only quiet space.
That's kind of what it is. And so
there's not a lot of privacy here.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many people hanging out.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
So as we're recording this, we're on we're in Tuesday, I think, right?
Tuesday. Yeah.
So tomorrow is Wednesday, and that is the peak day for attendees at this marathon.
Yes,
I heard there's gonna be like 37 people here or something.
Yes.
37 souls in this house.
I'm so glad I don't have to try and find a bed that night.
Yeah, you guys are bouncing, so you're lucky for that. Yeah, for sure.
We leave tomorrow around noon, but we've been here already for almost about 24 hours, I think. Yeah, just about. And Al, why don't you tell our Another Zelda podcast audience a little bit about the Zelda Dungeon marathons and what it accomplishes each year?
Yeah, so this has been going on for a little over 10 years, I believe, and every year we pick a charity, usually that's revolving around children, to raise money for. We do a week long of playing every Zelda game in existence, or at least we attempt to. There's a lot of competitive races. There's a lot of gimmicky shenanigan races of these Zelda games. Sometimes the Zelda game is played with competition, and sometimes it's played with just to mess with the players. People can donate to mess with them, to do all sorts of things. But this year we're doing No Kid Hungry, so every donation goes towards feeding kids and getting the resources that people need to get food to these kids, because there's enough food in the U.S., but kids are not getting that food.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's really about the infrastructure of getting food from point A to point B,
exactly.
and point B being into kids that
and I believe some of that infrastructure is through meals given at schools and stuff like that.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Working on that infrastructure.
Yep. So every dollar can provide up to 10 meals for children, so that's wonderful. I don't know where we're at now, but I think we were creeping up to 6,000.
Yeah.
We were close to 6,000.
Yeah, it was over 5 a few hours ago.
Yes,
yeah.
So which is fantastic, and it's an awesome event. I've been coming for, I think this is my 6th year or something, and so it's really awesome to have you guys and to see my co-hosts in person, because we don't record in person.
That's right. Yeah, you record just about every week. And Andy, maybe I'll flip over to you here to tell our audience a little bit about the Zeldacast. Though I think much of our audience is now familiar with the Zeldacast. We get a lot of feedback saying heard you guys on that show, that show. I think we're definitely podcast friends. These two shows, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love all the different Zelda podcasts. I'm a big believer in what's that old saying about high tides, right? So I really love getting to do this with you guys, actually, and you specifically, David. I was really excited that you were coming back. But yeah, I mean, the Zeldacast, it's our weekly Zelda podcast from Zelda Dungeon. That rain or shine, we pump something out every week, and this summer's been great, actually, because it's been easy to produce content because there's a lot of content from Tears of the Kingdom, so we've been full bore into that. But we do our weekly show. We stream it on Twitch. We got to do a live episode actually as part of the Zelda Dungeon Marathon. Which by the way is more, the marathon is actually kind of expanded since I started to be a little bit more than just playing games. There's some fun stuff like Al and I will have our show, or there's a couple guests that Zelda tunes, or there's kind of they're
doing a Zelda newlywed game right now.
Yeah, how well do you know your we're not newlyweds, but I think we could have done pretty well, Al.
we might
I think we
actually
could have beat
okay.
all those newlyweds.
Zelda pals
Yeah.
instead of newlyweds. I think that would have been fun.
There's something there. There's something there for next year.
Yeah. So that's what the Zeldacast is all about, and I think I was really like excited. Like after we recorded our episode last year for AZP, I was like, wow, that was like, I think I told Al, and I think I probably told you too, and I was like, that was a really like great conversation, and I was pretty excited about it.
It was kind of a back to your roots conversation
A
with
little
Zelda
bit.
and podcasting.
It was we got to geek out about podcasting
Yeah.
and Zelda, and
We did-
I love that.
I was just meeting the two of you in person that about a year ago at that event and that experience. So there was a little bit of like, well, let's talk about our first Zelda experience. Let's talk about our favorite Zelda game, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
But you're absolutely right. We were able to spend the second half of the episode, Kady, really just kind of talking about what it's like making a podcast, what it's like, I wouldn't say behind the scenes, but just maybe a little bit of we were able to relax out of performance mode a little and just talk about making shows
Yeah.
and what that life is like.
Yeah, and I think like, I think it's really interesting too, because like in so many ways, like we kind of talked about the format, and like the Zeldacast format is a bit different than AZP's format, which is like, and they're very complementary. I feel like
I was just gonna say that. I think like people can listen to both shows and get different
yeah,
experiences.
exactly. So like it's a really nice like balance, like a different like formats that really work, and we talked a little bit about like what it's like making stuff that maybe is evergreen, maybe stuff that is weekly, and yeah, just that kind of stuff. So it was really cool, and I'm glad we're back around too.
Yeah, I enjoyed the Zeldacast and listening to it because it's very much like a Zelda finger on the pulse Zelda fan. You know what I mean? Talking about what's going on now. You guys have a lot of fun episodes where we talk about the older stuff too. But it's definitely like it keeps me on the heartbeat of the fandom, right?
Yeah,
And then I don't know if I'm just making this up right now, but then I feel like AZP is a little bit more like, oh, and then you go sit on the couch with a friend later and like reminisce about some weird game from 20 years ago, and it's like a different kind of thing. So I do think they're very complimentary, and I always enjoy us getting together.
yeah.
If I may, today we're gonna kind of go classic AZP episode. We're gonna do a top 10 episode, which is one of our staples. I just thought it would be fun, partly because I thought the reason I decided we're gonna do top 10 epic moments today from any Zelda game ever. And each of us have picked 3. We're going to go around and build up a top 10, which is actually probably going to be 12, but we might have some duplicates, so it'll go back down. And we're just going to see what kind of aggregate list we end up coming up with by the end here. All 3 of us have picked 3, or all 4 of us have picked 3 moments. And the reason, pardon me, the reason I thought that this particular topic would be interesting is because I know that, Kady joined AZP in season 6 here. And Kady, you're in ways a new Zelda fan, and you have a lot of backlog to expose yourself to, and I think that's going to be a really exciting journey. Like, we actually left the Ocarina of Time Master Quest stream that's going on below us right now to record this episode, and Kady, that was the first time you ever saw Ocarina of Time in action, I think.
I want to play it so bad.
Yes.
It's really fun.
One of us. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought what was interesting, we have a unique opportunity here because some of us will be able to dig really deep and maybe pull some epic moments out that might inspire new people that found Zelda who listen. We have a lot of young listeners, we have a lot of old listeners, and we might have a breadth, no pun intended, of options here. So before we get into that, I'm going to just do 4 listener feedbacks real quick, and then we'll start building our list. Sound good?
Yes.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Amazing. All right. The first one is from Daniel Espy, and this is over on, I think this is a YouTube comment actually, Kady, this is for one of the episodes that we recorded fairly recently, the music of Breath of the Wild.
Oh, I love that episode.
Part 1. It was a great one. We ended up calling it Part 1, Al and Andy, because we realized there was so much music in Breath of the Wild. Like in our production notes, it was the Breath of the Wild music episode. And then as Kady was putting all the songs together, we were
I came to David. I was like, so I have like 30 songs.
Yikes.
Those are the ones I narrowed it down to.
Right. And so then I was doing the math and I was like, I think this is 3 episodes. And I don't think we should do them back to back. Let's just pepper them in future seasons. So anyways, it was a part 1. But anyways, all of that is to say that Daniel Espy over on YouTube said, "Hey AZP, I found your podcast only a couple days ago, but have been loving the backlog exploration I found myself in. A note on the Kakariko Village theme, presumably in Breath of the Wild. The harp sound you said seems like MIDI is actually a koto. It's a Chinese version, is called the zeng, which doesn't have quite the same tone production method as a Western harp. That's why we thought that we were like, it sounds like a harp, but it sounds like
Yeah.
recorded or something, is what I remember us saying. I'd be more than pleased to talk about instrumentation with you all in Zelda, since the Wind Waker soundtrack is what set my path towards music in stone 20 years ago. Again, I'm loving your work. Keep it up. Green heart emoji. And I think our listeners and our fans know that for me personally, I've deemed the green heart emoji as our like Zelda love emoji. That's just that.
Cute.
It's like our almost
Right.
like our
Very
AZP
cute.
handshake. You know what I mean? And so whenever we see the green hearts, it's like support. It's like when you see it on Discord, that's what that means for us at AZP.
Very cute.
So, yeah. So I don't know. Do you have anything to say about that, Kady? About that harp noise?
No, that's really cool that you were able to kind of figure that out. I don't know if you just could figure that out with your ears or not, but that's really cool to know. And also, congrats on getting into music through Wind Waker.
Yes.
We do have a Wind Waker episode scheduled with Mallory Kuhn, who's one of our blog writers, and she and I are recording that like in October, so I think it'll probably come out somewhere in December. I think it'll be a good one. Okay, moving along real quick. Over on Instagram, Brendan Hicks sent us a DM actually and said, "Hey people, love the podcast. Are you guys going to make some t-shirts with the annoying Navi catchphrase, 'Hey listen, ... to another Zelda podcast?'"
That's so cute.
I mean, yeah, we're
Simple
all,
but genius.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
so. Maybe so. Or maybe it's like, "Hey, listen, ... on the front," and then, or "Hey, listen to," I don't know, and then another Zelda podcast on the back. I don't know. I'm not sure. We actually don't have many t-shirts. We have just our standard logo one, and then we have like a few others that are just kind of fun. But Brendan, yeah, that's inspiration to make something more, to design a few more things. I think we got to go that route. Move right along here. Over on, I think this is Discord here. Killian said, "Just some general feedback. It would mean the world to me if it was read on an episode." Well, hopefully,
There you go.
we're fulfilling it, Killian.
Maybe that.
"I love this podcast so much and will listen forever. I listened from Ireland, and this
Oh.
was the first podcast I ever listened to, and believe it or not, but I was just looking for music on Spotify and saw the podcast and liked the podcast icon, so I clicked on and now listen every day. I think you are around 100 episodes, not including Patreon. So congratulations. Okay, bye." Thanks, Cillian.
I think
Cillian?
it's
Killian?
Killian, because I
Killian,
think
I think
Killian is
so.
an Irish name.
Yeah, it's the C that's throwing me off, but you're
Okay.
absolutely right. I think it is Killian. That's awesome. I designed that logo myself, so if that caught your eye, I'm really appreciative. I know, Andy, we talked last year about making logos and designing
yeah.
things.
Yeah.
The Zeldacast got the cool link with the hands up, the da-da-da-da look.
Old MS Paint.
Yeah,
That's what it's
hey,
all about.
Hey, you made MS Paint work hard. It looks well. It looks good. Shall we get into our top 10?
Yes.
I'm ready.
So I do have some honorable mentions at the end here as well. And, usually when we build these top 10s, we have a little more space to pick. Basically, it's two hosts, and you do a
Yes.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 was tight. There was so many that I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was struggling with it as well, but I'm glad we have some honorable mentions.
I was concerned because I was like, all right, like I there's some moments in the series, but like I'm pretty sure other people. So I wanted to try and go for like maybe some different kind of cuts because
Yeah.
But then honor still some of those like incredible moments that I think at least some of us are gonna have on our list. So I got like a healthy mix of both, and I got some backups. So if we have any doubles, maybe I'll throw some of those other deep cuts on there, and if not, so I'm glad we have honorable mentions.
I see. Well, what if we go reverse around? I was going to go first, but Andy, why don't we start with you? What would be your technically third pick? And we're going from
Okay.
least to most, even though we love all of these moments.
Okay, so I had a pick, and I have to admit, I was trying to steer away from Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity and Tears of the Kingdom, just because I figured, Kady, you
I'm
might
gonna
have
be
some on
picking
your
for
list.
those, yeah.
But I would be a liar if I said that there was a moment from Breath of the Wild that was like so awesome. And I want to set the stage here a little bit here. So you have completed the Champions Ballad DLC, or so you've thought. Okay, you're all the way in. You've made it through the Obliterator, the one-hit Obliterator. You've done all 16 extra shrines.
Mhm.
You've done the fantastic final Divine Beast, which is an excellent dungeon and far away probably the best Divine Beast.
I agree.
And you go to the end, and you finally, you're seeing that monk that you see at the end of every shrine, and you're like, okay, gimme, what do I get for defeating this Divine Beast? And all of a sudden, the setting starts to change, and you start to rise into the sky, and the hardest music in the series
Yes.
starts playing. It's and then the monk, whose name is Monk Maz Kashia, says something like absolutely stone cold. It's like, I don't know, you will get no mercy from me. Like, let's go, basically. And you're on this like giant circular thing in the sky, and there's this like the rain's coming down. You've got this music just pumping up. My blood is like pulsing like Frankenstein's monster, and I'm like, yes. And you have one of the best boss fights in the series, versus Monk Maz Kashia. And this moment to me is like so awesome. Like, it's so fantastic, and it was the kind of like new boss battle that I wanted from newer Zelda,
I
right?
see.
And I don't know if I had my itch scratched with any of the boss encounters in Breath of the Wild, but this one I was like, this is it. This is so good. It was cinematic. It was a challenging fight too. But the build up and the presentation towards it, that is what I would call like epic. Like, that one, I was just like, I was fired up. Like, at that point, even if the boss fight would have kind of been like, yeah, this was an okay boss fight, I still would have been like, this is awesome.
Like, that moment.
It
was a highlight for me too, Andy. I'm so glad that you included this on your list, because I didn't. But yeah, you're reminding me how awesome that is, that spot. How epic it is.
Yes. I honestly, that's one of my favorite themes in like the entire series. It might be like my second or third favorite theme in the entire series, that Monk Maz Kashia boss fight. It's so good.
It's very good.
We talk about it a lot.
Any thoughts, Allie?
I mean, we talk about it all the time with Monk Maz Kashia. Like, that's our jam. And it's just like, I agree. It's such a like, especially after you completed Breath of the Wild and you're like, okay, I kind of did everything I could do. They give you this fantastic dungeon, and then they give you this like this just monumentous boss. It's so much. It's honestly the best boss fight of the game, and like, in my opinion. And I'm sorry, but when you fight like 4 blights in a row, and then Calamity Ganon, and then Dark, it's just it kind of feels a little underwhelming. And then, but you get this like really awesome boss fight for DLC, and I agree, it's just like such an epic moment. So I didn't think of that one at first. I'm glad you put that on the list.
I remember like absolutely popping off when we unlocked, or when we found out rather, that Monk Maz Kashia was an Age of Calamity. And I was like, oh yeah, I got to hear the Age of Calamity like remix of this song. And I don't think there was any, but
I
was pretty excited to see my pal Maz in that game.
And then, of course, that yields the Master Cycle too. Well, did they call it the Master Cycle? Or is it just
Master Cycle Zero.
That's what it was. Yeah. I'm gonna guess, Kady, based on your reaction right now, that you have not played the DLC for Breath of the Wild.
He called me out. I was trying to be like, yes, I
totally understand. Well, now
we got to get you hooked up with the DLC.
I know.
It's worth it.
It's unbelievable. It's so much fun.
It is.
No, because I love Breath of the Wild. Here's my thing. I love Breath of the Wild, and then I reset my game because I was like, okay, I'm gonna play this again, and then I never ended up playing it again, and then the DLC dropped, and I'm like, well, I have to play the whole game again, and then play the DLC.
For what it's worth, I've replayed the game with DLC included, and it kind of still works embedded in as you play. Certain things get unlocked as you go. So you could do the DLC and maybe experience Breath of the Wild in its full naturally as you play.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
like there's items that get unlocked right away, and then after a certain time, then new shrines get unlocked. So there are checkpoints as you go.
Okay, cool.
Certain things
I
happen
believe,
after the 4 beasts.
it'll unlock as a main quest once you've done all 4 Divine Beasts.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you have
don't
like the
have
option
to beat the game to start the DLC.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it still lives. It technically lives pre-Ganon big old Ganon
yes,
fight.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, I'll have to do that.
Wow, cool. All right, Al, what's your first or third, I guess, really, technically?
Okay, and I just...
pardon me. Can you put down
Oh,
the
yeah,
list
I've
there,
already
Katie,
written
whatever
it.
it is? The fight? Okay,
Monk
cool.
fight.
Monk fight.
Monk fight.
Maz Kashia.
Monk
Maz
Maz
Kashia.
Kashia. I also wanted to steer clear of like Breath of the Wild and Tears. I do have a very like special Tears moment. Actually, there's 2, but I don't want to talk about it because it's like at the end and it's like major spoilers for you guys, and I don't want to ruin it for you because it's like an experience.
Okay.
So, but I will do something that I'm pretty sure both of you have done, and it is the Colgera boss fight in Tears of the Kingdom.
Is that the Rito?
That is the Rito.
Wonderful
Dungeon boss fight. I will never shut up about Colgera. I freaking love Colgera boss fight. The fact, like, getting up to that dungeon was, like, gearing you up for this boss fight, I feel. And, like, the music is great, and then you get into this boss fight, and the music is just even, like, 10 times more great. And then you're up in the sky, and I love just dive bombing this guy, because he's got these, like, these ice circles that you just dive bomb straight into, and, like, they shatter, and it's just so satisfying, and the music and the wind, and it's crazy and hectic, and it's just such a cool moment, and it like really set the tone for me for tears for the rest, because I did that first, so it really just set the tone for how my tears adventure was going to be from start to finish. So that is one of my most epic moments.
I love it. That was my first boss, and so far only boss as well. And I thought it was the best parts of, when you have that little dragon side quest in Breath of the Wild and you're flying around the dragon, and that felt kind of epic at the time. It takes the best parts of that and the best parts of what I would call like a classic Zelda boss.
Exactly.
Where you're really solving a puzzle more than just like putting a bunch of arrows into the thing's face or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it was cool. I loved it so much. Have you experienced?
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
I
of
did.
course you have.
I have done all the champions, but I would say I love that so much, and I get why you have to why they encourage you to do the Rito first, because Tulin's ability is so good. But I almost wish they would save it like for later,
I
because
kind of agree.
I feel like it's the best one out of all of them. So there was no like after that. I was like, okay,
I
these
almost
ones are
agree.
okay.
Maybe it was a little too epic.
I did Gerudo first in Breath of the Wild, which I thought was the best one, because you do like the Yiga clan, and I did that first, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is like what a great starting point, and it turns out that was like the best one, I thought. So I was like, I wish I would have done this last almost. But yeah, what I kind of found out about myself putting together this list of epic moments was I really appreciate like a build up, or like the presentation. So like, even just like scaling all the way up to the Stormark ship, like getting on those
so
trampolines,
cool.
it was so cool. And I was like, it was my first dungeon as well, and I was like, man, we're pretty high up here. Like, oh, I hope I don't fall, and just like bouncing from trampoline to trampoline.
Did you ever get a little bit of the pit in your stomach? Because I did.
Oh yeah. I was like, just don't die. Just
I
don't fall.
talked about that on the stream the other day, when you're like, even though it's not you, but you're in the game and there's like a high up place, or you fall from a high distance, do you get that roll in your stomach? And I didn't know that I always was like, I'm the only one that happens. But when I talked about it on stream, everybody's like, oh yeah. So I was like, yes, okay, cool.
Yeah, that absolutely happens in Tears. Wonderful, love it. So we've got the boss fight down.
So talking, you're more for presentation. I am more story driven with things. So for my epic moments, for my third one, I said the first time when you play Breath of the Wild and you have the Blood Moon Rise.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, good pick.
Because I think it's just such a cool mechanic that hasn't really been introduced before. And you're walking around and you just see like the little bits start in and the music starts to get a little more ominous. And you're like, what's happening? Is there something around me? What's going on? And then you hear Zelda's voice, which up to this point you had only heard her voice because you hadn't seen her in any memories or anything. And you hear her like watches the Blood Moon rise, and you see all these creatures coming around, and the moon is red and everything's red and you can't see anything. It's so cool. Obviously it loses its mystique after the first 20 times, but the first time is just incredible.
Yeah, but you're also kind of touching on that build-up thing Andy was talking about, where you start to get the weird like noises, and like the red comes out of the ground, and the first time it happens you're like, what now? You know what I mean?
Yes,
because up to this point, like if you were like me, I was still running around like Hyrule Fields, so up to this point it was like, oh, la la la, fine and dandy, everything's great, oh, look at these flowers, and then it just gets so creepy.
How do you? Well, I have to ask then, just to piggyback off that, how do you feel it compares to the Blood Moons in Tears of the Kingdom?
I want to share this with you, but on TikTok I saw someone edit the Thriller talk, like Michael Jackson's Thriller, when he talks in the middle of it.
Oh, like coming out in the middle of the night, blah blah blah.
He edited that music underneath it, and it fit perfectly, and that's all I can think of now.
Nice.
I do think it's cool. I just think I don't know, something about seeing Zelda when she says it makes me be like, this is kind of cringe, because she just stands there, she's like, watch as the blood moon rises.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, and there's like something to that, but I don't want to spoil that either.
Yeah. I think we know something's afoot with that Zelda. Yeah.
So I'm not quite
I
right.
think you just said that. It just made me realize what you're talking about. Oh my god, I never even put two and two together. That's amazing. Okay, I take back everything I said. No, that's brilliant. I love it. I
Call
love
her
it.
Puppet Zelda. I don't know what to call her.
Yeah,
but
no, it's brilliant. I take it back. I love it so much.
That's why it's like that. That's great. Mine's also, my number 3 is also a Tears of the Kingdom moment. And I almost didn't put it on here, but it did it was kind of one of those one-time things, maybe like a Blood Moon. The first time it happened, I had real emotions and raw emotions, and I was I was filled with emotions. And it was a little bit of the buildup. And I'm nervous to talk about it because I think as I say it, people will be like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, yeah. But I want to preface it by talking about the now famous quote unquote first shot in Breath of the Wild of the camera following Link out of the cave, and we get to see the whole thing. And that was such a famous way to introduce the game for 5 years. Everyone was very, we're used to it now, but it was a very emotional experience. I would like to talk about what my version of that moment is in Tears of the Kingdom. Because as I was playing that first hour or so of Tears of the Kingdom, there was a couple times where I thought like, oh, this must be the big moment. This must be the big moment. Oh, now I'm on Sky Islands. This must be the big reveal. Oh no, really nothing happened there. Oh, now I'm going around. Oh, this must be the big moment. And I jump off another thing, go to another part. No, it wasn't that one. It wasn't that part. And it wasn't until you finally, I think it's maybe going to the main Sky Islands. I think I have my timeline wrong, but it doesn't matter. It's when the logo shows up and he's falling.
He dives down.
So he's diving down and you're like, cool, the diving's already neat. But the way that the music swells, where and how it swells, the way the camera, the cinematography really coming down and through, and just it's so cinematic that for me to experience, I feel like it is even better than the Breath of the Wild title screen. Not that it's a competition.
I think so.
It's certainly more epic.
More epic. And so for me, with my heart being ready for a sequel, I guess, you're only an hour in and you're like, what's in front? Let's do this. Like, it was such a great way to get into the game where once I, landed, I felt like responsibility once I landed in that pool after that shot. Yeah. And so just the way that, I think they even framed it so that Tears of the Kingdom shows up a little bit to the side of the screen. It's all balanced really well. And so, I honestly think it's epic. And I think that it's even more epic than the Breath of the Wild one that everybody loves so much for me. Yeah, so that's my third, my low one.
I'd agree with that.
Cool.
Well, I think like there's a lot of like real world build up to that too, right? Like, cause you can't separate the real world from it. And you've been waiting for this game for so long, and there was that weird delay, and like all of those. Like I felt something sort of similar where like I was like, I can't believe I'm like playing. I've been talking about this game forever, and now it's like Tears of the Kingdom, and I was like, okay, like
I could like feel how giddy I was.
I think you're right. There's a meta element. It's like we've been waiting for that logo since 2019 or something.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And they nailed it.
Yeah. So I actually like saying that. I think I agree a lot actually.
Yeah, and I'm also now realizing that it's even more of it's epic because it is a bit meta. It's almost about being a Zelda fan, but that's fine.
Yeah.
So I think let's see, where are we at on our time? How about this? Let's take a break real quick. We're only about 30 minutes in exactly. Maybe it's a little early. We've only done one round, but I think we come back and do the other two rounds and call it a day.
Honorable mentions.
And some honorable mentions. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, cool. I'll see you on the other side of the break. It's the first day of school, and I'm walking around downtown Chicago with hundreds of other students. Everyone's getting back from summer break, and you can tell that they're happy to see each other after a couple months. For me, however, it's been a little longer. Hi, I'm David, and I want to introduce you to Returning Student, a documentary podcast that I've been making about my return to a college that I left 20 years ago. I'm back in the same city, at the same school, the same student ID number. Everything else feels completely different. My fellow classmates are literally half my age. My professors work in my industry. Sometimes I wonder why I've come back at all. But then I get the opportunity to sit down with one of my professors and have a conversation with them, which usually yields a little bit of wisdom. You can find the show on all major podcast providers, as well as our website, returningstudentpodcast.com. A lot has changed over the past 2 decades.
Hey, this is TC.
And this is Jim from The Studio Demands It,
a bi-weekly screenwriting podcast where every episode we conceptualize and craft an entire screenplay based on the demands of one of our listeners acting as a studio.
From hypothetical sequels of popular franchises,
to reboots or reimaginings of films that deserve a fresh chance,
to hypothetical films that simply must be brought into existence.
Join the creative process over at studiodemandsit.com. Hope to see you there. Well, I can't see us.
Hope to hear them there?
Hope to hear us there.
Yep.
Hello there, listeners. David here. You know, the whole team at Another Zelda Podcast appreciates every bit of support our listeners give. And if you'd like to enjoy some extra content, we invite you to consider becoming a patron through our Patreon page. Sword members get a thank you on our website, as well as monthly digital wallpapers for all your devices, and the opportunity to participate in an annual meetup on Discord with the AZP team.
White Sword members will get everything the Sword tier gets, and also they'll get access to episodes a week early, as well as bonus episodes that we record specifically for Patreon. A new thing we're doing is monthly Discord meetups where we'll play trivia and hang out with you as well. Lastly, and this is our most popular tier, actually, the Magical Sword level, which includes, of course, everything from the previous 2 levels, but also gives supporters access to behind-the-scenes videos that we produce and behind-the-scenes extended video versions of every episode. Thank you so much for your time. Let's get back to the show. And if you're already on Patreon, we are so grateful that you're helping us keep another Zelda podcast vibrant.
And we are back. Kady, I want to jump right into these, but let's just do a real quick bullet point recap of where we're at with our, I guess it's the first 4 at the bottom of the list. It doesn't.
Yeah.
There's no exact list here. It's just fun to build it. So what do we have so far?
All right. So we have the monk fight in Breath of the Wild DLC.
What a weird.
Oh, we got the air dungeon or air temple from Tears of the Kingdom.
Specifically the Colgera boss fight.
Yeah.
Specifically Colgera boss fight.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first time you see Blood Moon Rise
Mhm.
in Breath of the Wild, and the diving down title screen at the beginning of Tears
Yeah,
of
I
the
guess.
Kingdom.
Yeah, Tears of the King title screen. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Calling it that. Absolutely.
These are very brief bullet points. So
That's
thank
the
you
whole
for
point.
Clarifying your points.
So Andy, now we're starting to get into the meat and the potatoes. What would be your second, at least for today, as we were building this list?
So there is a moment that is more story, kind of like you were saying, a little bit of build up, a little bit of just, it's a cool scene. And I'm talking about Skyward Sword, specifically the moment outside of the Temple of Time where Girahim he's all over you, and it does not look good for you. And you almost have Zelda. And Al, you might have to help me out with the scene because I only remember like the actual scene, so I might get some of this build up wrong.
Mhm.
But you've almost got Zelda. She's almost in your grasp, and she's just out of reach. And Girahim shows up, and you have to, fend him off. And you're clearly not really up for the task at this point. And so Impa has to step up, and she just blocks Girahim's attack with her own sword. And there's like this big like collision between the two of them in this slow motion, and like it's so awesome to see
She's
these
just
like.
using energy. She doesn't even have a weapon. She's
Yeah,
just
that's
using
right.
like an energy shield.
It's
Yeah.
almost like
Yeah.
when you see like a martial arts movie and they kind of do like a cool move that just like it's like very very like
It's like
low
swift
effort or something,
and
but
like
swift, yeah.
like to the point, and her job was to shield Zelda.
Yeah.
So,
So I
and it-
remember this now.
it's a simple it's a quick moment too, but it was so I think we all remember that, and it's just like, man, this is cool. And like it really helps that Girahim was such a fantastic villain.
Mhm.
I think that this is the best version of Impa. Certainly, like for me, like aesthetic, what just her character design I thought was awesome.
Yeah. No,
So,
I agree.
Seeing like these two cool cats go at it was super cool. And then you kind of have the added tension and drama of Zelda there, and you're so close to your goal, but yet so far. And you kind of have this is almost like the post credit moment to this moment, but like when Impa kind of says to you like listen, if you're gonna be a hero, like you need to step up and be like a
Yes.
real hero.
Mhm.
Like what you're doing is not good enough, and it's
Yeah.
kind of just like, man, like who. Yikes. But like at the same time, you've kind of see her demonstrate her abilities and her power, and it clearly looks a lot more powerful than you. So
Mhm.
it's very cool in like a lot of different ways. But there is something to be said for just two cool characters getting into it and going face to
Yeah.
face, even if the interaction only lasts for a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing moment. You're absolutely right. And Impa in general, the Skyward Sword Impa, I think, is my favorite Impa as well.
Oh yeah.
Love the aesthetic. She's kind of, I guess you could say, epic. It's interesting because she's not along for the ride often. She only pops in here and there, a bit like Sheik and Ocarina.
Mhm.
And but her presence, and when she is in the game, it is so cool. Like she's taken charge and she's letting Link know. There's a few times where she has that moment of like, I had to step in because you weren't here, so step it up. You know what I mean?
And like she's very impactful and very just a very like great version of Impa, and it was kind of like you never really saw that. Like Link's kind of this infallible guy who solves everybody's problems, never does any wrong. So it was kind of like a breath of fresh air to see someone just be like, you're not the hero yet. You need to step it up. You need to become who you are supposed to be.
I can't help
Yeah.
but. Oh yeah, what were you
I
gonna
was
say?
gonna say, I know it's not the topic for today, but it's one of the reasons why Skyward Sword Link, from what I've played so far, he's like one of my favorite Links. Just because he feels more like a person, in terms of like he feels like a kid, you know.
Yeah.
He isn't like he's really sleepy. He gets into fights with all other kids. He's like super in love with Zelda to the point of like his downfall and like all this different kind of stuff. He has his faults, and I think that's really fun for him.
Yeah, I had a friend once who started playing Skyward Sword HD just a couple years back, and just a few hours in, also had never played a Zelda game before, and a few hours in said, "This is like a TV show. Is this what Zelda games are like? Because there's just so much narrative off the
Yeah.
top
Yes.
of Skyward, you know."
Yeah. Well,
And I was like,
think
"Well, kind of."
Skyward Sword to me is kind of the point where Link transforms more from like your player avatar into like Link. Like he's the character of Link. And there's some elements there where he's still kind of your avatar, but he's also Link. Like he's got his own quirks and his own traits, and they kind of gave him, not an entire journey, but like at least something to chew on in terms of his character. So I'm glad we have a lot of Team
spoke
Skyward
about-
Sword people here.
Yeah, I don't want to dig in too hard, but we spoke a little bit about the facial animation system for Wind Waker Link on your episode over on the Zeldacast, and I understand that I'll call it animation system absolutely got grandfathered into Twilight and right into Skyward Sword, and I feel like Skyward Sword. Oh, also they rewrote the cutscene engine for Skyward Sword so that they could animate the characters as actual like keyframe animation instead of just trying to manipulate in-game things and stuff like that. And so I think that's where we get some more of that Link personality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So Al, what's your second on the list today?
Okay, I got my next two are like pretty big moments in the series, so maybe Kady needs to cover her ears.
Unless we're kind
I'm
of
okay, I'm
we're
okay.
like AZP is. I think I would say spoiler friendly. We don't do spoiler casts, but it's
Okay.
kind of like, we're talking about the games we play. It's all part
Right,
of the
and like
zeitgeist.
these of course are like 20+ year moments, but for new players, so I just want to get the spoiler warning.
Well, once in a while, spoiler warning for our listeners. I love it. I appreciate it. But like even just earlier today, we were having coffee in the morning, and you were telling me off mic, you're like, well, the fifth whatever in Twilight, Tears of the Kingdom,
yes.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
But then
Oh,
it
no,
made me
you
more
didn't.
excited.
Well, it wasn't me
But
actually, but
oh, it wasn't you? Oh,
no,
it was.
but we were having that discussion about the spirit temple.
It was the
Right.
gentleman sitting next to you. That's right. I
Yeah.
remember now. But honestly, it just made me more excited to find
Yeah,
out. what
I
that
was
is
gonna
now.
say I
Yeah.
normally get more excited from spoilers.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you've played a Super Smash Bros. Game, this probably isn't new news. If
Oh,
that's where
that's
you're
my
going.
number one.
Oh, I'm so
Oh
sorry.
my gosh, I think I know.
I think I know
Anyway,
what you're
so
talking
number
about.
2, here we go. Safe
Okay.
space. You're in a safe
All right,
space.
yeah.
Okay. So we'll get to that one then for number one. But for number two is you're playing Wind Waker and you get to the the final boss battles are like really epic in Zelda, so I can't help but adding this one. Is you're fighting Ganondorf in Wind Waker, and like the music is super bombastic. You got this big hulking guy and this tiny little 10-year-old kid with he's there to save Zelda and save the world essentially, and he knows he's the hero, and he's like there to get work done. But for about 4.5 minutes, Ganondorf has his monologue, is kind of beating Link around a little bit, and it's like he's super intimidating. But when you finally fight him, it's really an epic fight, and then it ends with just this great shot of Link flipping up in the air and slamming that Master Sword down into Ganondorf's skull, and then he turns into like stone. But it's just like from such a cartoony looking game too. It's like such a morbid looking shot, but at the same time, it was just like, yeah, like I finally did
Oh, it was
it.
awesome.
I know. I mean, I think the graphics in Wind Waker, it's one of the more violent moments in a Zelda game,
Yes.
technically,
Yeah,
on
technically.
paper.
There's a couple,
But because of the art style, it works, and you're right. It does give you I think the correct emotions, if I may.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much. It felt very accomplished when you just drive that.
Because also, doesn't the
Yeah.
camera pan out a little? Isn't it like you see Link pop up, and then it's like ching, and then the camera kind of pulls back to reveal
As
it? Am I
he's-
remembering
yeah.
this correctly?
Yeah, it they hover there for a minute, like, oh, this just happened, and then he starts to turn to stone,
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
That's an epic moment for me.
I would say Ganondorf's demise in Wind Waker is what we put on the
Oh,
list.
I wrote like a little description for that one.
Got it.
Going back to the setting too, it's very cool to see that water pouring around you, so you feel like you're in imminent danger of this place could overflood any second.
Mhm.
And I think what actually really adds to that, it makes it even more awesome for me, is this is truly like the first time you've had like the 3 Triforce holders involved in like the same fight at the same time.
That's true.
Because you know, Zelda's more of a peripheral player in Ocarina of Time, and this one she's like actively helping you and shooting Ganondorf, and it's such a, again, it's an awesome build up to that moment.
Yes.
So
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, she gives Link the light arrows in Ocarina, but in Wind Waker she's shooting them.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. Ooh, I love it. All right, Kady, number 2.
So for my number 2, I have an Age of Calamity, which I know, again, I've said this in like previous episode, is widely debated whether or not people like it. But for me, during Age of Calamity, when you're playing as Link at the beginning, and it's your first time getting to fight alongside the other knights of the garrison,
Oh, cool.
and you're running through like Hyrule, it's like all like a completely built city, fighting alongside your fellow knights in the streets, trying to like keep the monsters at bay. Just because I really enjoy thinking about kind of like what it was like before the Calamity and who Link was and all that kind of stuff. And so I loved that game so much because of the story elements, even though a lot of it isn't canon. But seeing like, how did Link interact with his fellow knights? Did they like him? Did they not like him because he's a hero? Oh, no, they got along really well because Link was like the silly, like dumb guy that kind of did whatever they said that he should do. He would just go for it and do it.
Interestingly said, but you're not
We're
wrong.
battling like
No,
1,000 enemies to tell us how you do.
No, one of my favorite moments is when Zelda's I think she's having like a kind of a serious conversation with like some Gorons, and it pans over and the knights are cheering Link on as he's trying to eat like a marbled rock roast, which is literal rock. And she's like, "What are you doing?"
I like the words too. Urbosa's like, whatever challenge, he'll rise to it. He's over here eating rocks.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so funny. It's so funny. I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, you know, there are some really epic. I actually think of a moment specifically. I want to say from Chapter 5 in Age of Calamity where, spoilers, but you know, you have some help come from another timeline, and like that moment to me was also awesome. I do think after playing Age of Calamity, I did kind of fall on the side where I wasn't all that satisfied. It's kind of weird because I was very satisfied with the story actually in a bubble, but I think it was more so like the way that they marketed it, and they were kind of, to your point, they're like, come see what Hyrule was like 100 years before the Calamity, and it wasn't quite that, like it kind of was, but it kind of wasn't, you know. So I feel like I maybe short sell Age of Calamity a little bit on some of these moments.
I feel we share the same opinions there, Andy. But actually, as you were speaking about this, Kady, I realized that one of my favorite moments in Age of Calamity is kind of, I'll just call it that first level where you are Link with the Knights, and guess what? You know, we've been in Hyrule, we've played Zelda games. It's usually Link alone. It's usually Link on a solo mission. And what happens when it really is a war? Yeah, to a degree, and you kind of get that in that first level. I think that's the moment you're kind of talking about.
Yeah, because it's even like, and I love in Tears of the Kingdom now, you can find people and fight alongside them.
Yes,
and you can see like they're actually doing damage. Like if you leave them alone, they can actually kill some of these monsters themselves. And I'm glad that they brought that into Tears of the Kingdom, because that was something I loved in Age of Calamity. Just that realness of fighting alongside your fellow knights.
Did you like the helping the Gerudo town, like with the Gibdo nest? That felt very Age of Calamity like.
I loved that. Yeah. I loved that so much.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was so
cool. It was really cool.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I've done that one yet, but
I'm
pushing through. Yeah,
It's
I'm
really
pushing through Age. Awesome. My number 2 is I had to put it on here because I've spoken about it before, and I think it needs to be on my list, even though I've kind of mentioned it before. You know, over the last 6 years of making this show. For me, an epic moment, a definitively epic moment. I think there's a lot of technically epic boss battles in Twilight Princess. And I say technically because I think a lot of the boss battles are presented in an epic way, but sometimes like the big weird flying fish is epic, but you're really not actually doing that much. You know what I mean? You're kind of just jumping on the back and pushing A lot. I have a boss battle from Twilight Princess that I feel that the first time I played it, the second time I played it, the third time I played it, every single time I was like, oh, here we go. And it lasts, you know, a good 5-10 minutes. And of course it's the Twillet Fossil Style Lord.
Yeah.
And I think that is a wonderful boss battle. Everything that leads up to it, when you're doing the spinner on the bottom, and then there's the surprise element in the second half where you're going up on the walls. And I mean, it feels like the freaking Star Wars trench run. It's so epic for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's so cool. Anyways, I don't. That,
I
so that's my
had
second.
that on my honorable mentions. Actually,
really?
Like, I think that and it's kind of a running gag on the Zeldacast. I kind of like to take a few jabs and shots at Twilight Princess, but like, at the end of the day, like I really do like Twilight Princess a lot, and particularly its boss battles, because I think there's a few boss battles that you could say
A+ boss battles
Yeah.
in Twilight Princess.
And I have one on my honorable mention that I want to talk about actually when we get to that.
Ooh.
But the oh god, what is his name? Agnarok, the dragon
Argarok
that you fight.
or
Argarok, yeah.
something of that nature.
Like that one, you're
Oh,
swinging around
yeah.
like Spider-Man. It's awesome, but like I mean, Star-Lord may be one of the best boss fights in the series. Like it's just so fun and like. Man, you're zip zapping around on the spinner and you're trying to hit him, and like it's so incredible. And even the phase before that, you got like this army of skeletons. There's chaos everywhere, and you're trying to just get that
you
one
really
perfect
like
shot.
the chaos
I
boss fights.
I love the chaos.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it gets your emotions going, and I realized
Yeah.
too, even though it's technically like a repeating situation, technically you're going around a column. When you enter the second phase of that fight, it doesn't stop moving. You
Yes.
are on the
Yeah.
move and on the go the whole time, and it just ramps up to that energy the
And
whole
you got to
way.
be on it too, because there's those spikes that start coming around too that'll knock you off, and it's a high tempo, fast paced boss fight, which I appreciate as well. So yeah, I had that on my honorable mentions. I think it's awesome.
My last little thing I'll say about it is it was a really weird item for Nintendo to invent. I thought
Yeah.
I love the spinner,
it's
though.
one of my favorite items.
Yeah,
we had
same.
like a
Yeah.
top 10 favorite items, and definitely the spinner was on there back in like
Yes.
season 1. But then they so expertly, in more than one way, used that spinner in that boss fight so that we were playing a boss battle in a way that we had never played a boss battle in a Zelda game before. That's just why it's on my list.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
Oof. All right, here we go. The final 4. No repeats yet.
No repeats yet.
Andy,
So-
what is for today your most epic moment?
So I had a entry for number 1, and I'm kind of second guessing it because it's a more meta entry. Like it doesn't take place in a Zelda game, so maybe I'll just save that for the honorable mentions. Actually,
Okay.
But if we were including that, it would be number 1, probably by far actually. But in terms of like something that takes place during a Zelda game, you just can't beat the first time you're playing A Link to the Past, and it's misty, and you're journeying through this forest, and that magical, whimsical Lost Woods theme is playing, and you've kind of, you've turned around, you're going backwards, forwards, upside down, and you finally enter that one peaceful, sacred little grove, and you see this pedestal, this beam of light shining on it, and it's this incredible sword that you feel like King Arthur in this moment, and you're like, I am in fact the hero that is going to pull this sword out, and as soon as you do, evil is in trouble because you are going to do whatever it takes. And so you go up to the sword, you pull it out, that theme starts playing, and you have the first time that you ever take the Master Sword out. And I debated whether Ocarina of Time or A Link to the Past was kind of the more epic one for me. But I think there's just something like so, I don't know, romantic about finding that sword in the forest and with the
Like
mist.
there's
and,
even little critters that are scampering away as
Yeah.
you walk up. It's gorgeous.
yeah, it's so like, it just makes you feel like you're in this like classic like fairy tale or something like that, or like adventure.
Totally.
And then you've got this incredible like mythical blade that now you're going to defeat Ganon, and now you have the ability to defeat Ganon. So the first time, and that wasn't even my first Zelda, but I think that's the best version of taking out the Master Sword.
Yeah.
Love it. I don't know, any thoughts, Al?
I mean, I agree. And that was my first moment of pulling the Master Sword, which is cool because it's the first moment ever of pulling the Master Sword. So, I played that with my brothers. We did it. It was super epic. And then, but I think the feeling continues because then we played Ocarina of Time later together, and we were like, there it is. There's the Master Sword. So, and the fact that it continues to be legend and your partner throughout the series, I think it helps that moment build. Even though the initial moment was epic, it makes it more epic that you can continue to have that moment throughout the series.
There was even one of the early Breath of the Wild trailers ended on the Master Sword in front of the Deku Tree. But in my opinion, the Breath of the Wild Master Sword is completely reinterpreting, for me, the A Link to the Past meadow. You know what I mean?
Very much
The
so.
mist
Yeah.
coming down. Yeah, find the Deku trees
And it
behind
looks a little worse for wear.
Yeah.
And just-
And in that trailer, when they finished with like just that little bing ding piano and they showed the Master Sword there, I was transported back to A Link to the Past.
Yes.
And I you know that was a really emotional moment.
I think of that moment. I think of Ocarina of Time, and Skyward Sword kind of gets you more even invested because you're essentially making the Master Sword. In
Twilight
Breath of
Princess
the Wild,
has a good one too.
yeah, Twilight Princess is good. I mean, even Tears of the Kingdom, like there's a moment that I won't go into, but like
yes.
when you get the Master Sword, it's like, ooh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I see. So that brings us to Alf, your number one for today.
Okay, here's my number one.
I'm ready.
Here's some spoilers for you. 25 years later.
Let's do it.
All right. The build up to this is also fantastic because when you become adult Link in Ocarina of Time, you find you have another kind of companion who's watching over your shoulder the whole time, and that's Sheik. And Sheik kind of helps you get your teleportation songs, gives you all these words of wisdom, helps you on your journey. Clearly, Sheik is doing their own thing over here, helping people while they are watching Link get his job done. And then you get to the end and you get the reveal of who Sheik is. And it's like this, like, I remember when I was a kid, I didn't see it coming because I was a child, but, and maybe if you played it as an adult, you could, but like when I was a kid and I was playing with my brothers, we were like, oh yeah, here's Sheik. Okay, we're going to go take Ganondorf together. And then Sheik does this like Triforce movement and turns into Zelda. And we were like, whoa! Like our minds were completely blown. Like 10-year-old me was just losing my marbles. And it's so cool to know that like Zelda was with you on the journey all along. And like that she was also doing her part while hiding from Ganondorf. Because it's quite unfortunate that she's hiding from Ganondorf the second she reveals herself. He's like, well, found you.
Yeah.
You know?
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. And like he knew, Ganondorf knew all he had to do is pay attention to Link and that she would reveal herself. So it's just such an insane moment. And like, I think it really also just set the tone for Zelda to have more involvement in the adventure with Link, not just Link going off to save Zelda. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yes.
That's true. And then even when you first meet Sheik the first couple times, yeah, Sheik's helping you ish, but you're still kind of like, is this for good? Is this for bad? What's going on here? And to have that entire gaming experience of all those encounters with Sheik to be recontextualized with that reveal is very, it's like it washed over me for sure as a teenager.
Yeah. Talking about because you said, oh, if you played Smash, they'll know this. So before I was even into Zelda at all, when I was really little, and I think it was Smash on the Wii that I played. I remember thinking, like, whenever I saw Sheik, I was like, whoa, he's really cool. Like, wow, look at him go. And I don't remember how I found out, if it was someone that I knew that played Zelda and mentioned it, or if I had seen it online or something. And I found out that Sheik was Zelda, who I had known as, like, Pink Dress, always gets captured. I was like, that's so cool. Like, she's a princess that can fight? That's crazy. Because I don't know, I was like 10, so
hey, that's great.
Yeah, even without playing Zelda at the time, it still like meant a lot to me to find out that Sheik was not a dude and that she was the princess, and that was really cool.
Love it.
I had a moment like that with Samus in Smash Bros, and I was like,
Yeah.
cool, like like this.
Your
is
introduction to Samus was through Smash Bros?
Yeah, it was, and
I
I was
really
like,
am older
I was
than
like,
you
this
guys.
guy, this robot guy's awesome. Like, I want to play his game, and I was like, what do you mean her? Like, what? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then, played Super Metroid and was a fan for life. But yeah, I mean, that moment is like legitimately shocking, I think. And I think I had the moment ruined for me, but like, I wish I could go back in like time and just like see, like, I think we take it for granted now because like I think everybody knows that.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those
But,
things
like-
that like once you know it, like the reveal
Yeah.
isn't as epic.
It's
but
kind of like watching The Sixth Sense, like,
yeah.
once you
Or
know.
it's almost Darth Vader father stuff at this
Yes,
point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or even better.
Yeah.
But like, I think that would have been just like legitimately shocking.
Yes, it was.
It
And
was.
like I said, it was all my brothers and I in one room watching this moment unfold, and it was pretty outstanding.
Because also by the time the reveal happens, at least for me, I was starting to lean on Link or Sheik emotionally as a friend. I was like,
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
this person is becoming a friend. What?
Yeah.
All that changes around. Awesome. All right, Kady, let's do your number one.
So my number one is very recent. So Tears of the Kingdom. You have all of your hearts. You have all your stamina. You're like, oh, I'm me from the last game. That's perfect. And you go down and you have this moment with Ganon, and it's super creepy. He turns to you. You try and fight him. He breaks your Master Sword. You cut him slightly, but it's just not working. Zelda's falling. You're trying to grab her. You get grabbed. And then you just watch as it completely takes all of your stamina and drains all of your hearts from you. And you're like, oh my God,
Yes.
this is terrifying. And then you're back to kind of square one. But that moment, I know logically it's good for a gameplay standpoint
Right.
for them to kind of get you back to how you were without having to be like, magic rules.
That's a little bit
Yeah.
the Metroid thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think the way they did it was a really good way to set Ganon up and the gloom up.
Yeah.
Because seeing it because it also has a sound effect of like do 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 do,
Yeah.
like taking all of your stuff away. It genuinely kind of scared me. It made me really worried for like what was gonna come.
Yep.
That's so fascinating too, because they're using the game UI to communicate what's being felt in the game. You know what I mean? The literal it's the literal dials going down, isn't that right? If
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
You said it was very Metroid actually, and I thought it was very smart.
I thought it was smart too because we were talking about it
Yeah.
pre-tiers, like because they did the gameplay showing with Eiji Aonuma, and he's like, "Yeah, look, check out the Sky Islands," and Andy and I are like, "Look at those 3 stars or those 3 hearts, you know,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
4 hearts," and we're like, we were dabbling between ideas of how are they gonna weaken Link so that it doesn't feel cheap. And it was very smart what they did. I thought when I saw it, I was like, "Yep, that okay, makes total sense."
Yeah,
That's
the
how you
way
do it.
they did that, because one of my favorite, I need to play the old 3, but one of my favorite games in recent years is God of War, and God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah.
And I was really disappointed in Ragnarok when they were like, "Oh, you don't have any of that stuff because the magic is dying," and it's like, okay, the magic's dying. Why don't I have my axe?
Yeah.
So that was like disappointing. Whereas when I played it with Link, I was like, okay, no, see, this is how you do that. Like,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
And just one last thing, like I again to harp on it, but I think like the presentation and build up like really sells this moment too, because like you're going deeper and deeper and
Absolutely.
deeper, and that Discord music that's a slightly off note. It's very unsettling.
Yeah.
Starts to kind of ramp up, get a little bit louder, a little bit creepier until you finally reach that room, and it kind of reaches a crescendo, and then it adds to that moment and kind of sells the danger and sells the threat of Ganondorf.
I mean,
Yeah, if we would have jumped into Mummy Ganondorf coming up, it wouldn't be the same. It needs that 15 minutes, doesn't
yeah,
I
it
think
was
so,
really
yeah.
good. Yeah, and then it was like the complete fact too of like Link, who's normally like this stoic being, like you could see he was like genuinely fearful. He was like in pain as it took his arm, and Zelda's scared and she's getting thrown off the cliff, and you're like, what's happening? It's so chaotic, but it's so good.
Ooh, I just want to go back and see it again. Anyways, wow, yeah, that's great. Love it, Kady. My microphone thing is squeaking. Okay, so my number one is, I feel like it might be obvious, but I have to recognize it. I have to do it, and also because, so I most recently, just before coming here, honestly, just 2 days ago, I recorded an episode with one of our blog writers. His name's Kevin, and he and I are very close to the same age, and we're both old enough that we experienced all of the Zelda games in real time as they came out.
Right.
I, as an 8-year-old, rented the original The Legend of Zelda. And so for the past 30 years, I've been experiencing this, I guess in real time is the way to say it. And so some of these beats, the Sheik thing was authentic. It was really happening. It wasn't like, oh, I think there's a twist that happened 20 years ago. It was like, we didn't really have the internet in that way yet. It was still like very Web 1.0. It was very just reading websites. So there wasn't really the chats going on as much. But those things were all very epic. So you would have to share those with your friends, but I'm getting off topic. The point is, I think if you are experiencing the Zelda games in release order and in real time, the literal most epic moment that's ever happened in any Zelda game ever in that context is Ganon at the end of Ocarina of Time.
Okay.
And it's specifically Ganon when those axes come down and the lightning cracks behind him and he's in his beast form. The closest at that point, Ganon had a beast form, but it was like a 4-tile pixel
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
fat pig, and
Yeah.
that's all it ever was. Ganon was never scary. I mean, technically, kind of scary maybe in the first game because he had pointy ears, but come on, he was 2 colors.
Yeah.
And when doing the castle and coming all the way down as a kid, and you do the ping pong, you play tennis with Ganondorf. And you defeat him, and you're like, whoa, that was pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
And you do the castle run, and then you realize, wait, it's just beginning. And specifically, because we were just entering an era of 3D video games, and the industry was still trying to figure out even how to make 3D video games in those years or those surrounding years. We didn't know what was possible. We didn't know what cutscenes would look like in 3D. You just kind of had to experience it as you went. The most epic cutscenes before Ocarina of Time were kind of like the end credits of Super Mario 64. That's about as like crazy as it got, was a camera swooping around levels. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden to have this like experience where you see him, he felt like he was 900 feet tall, you know, from the camera angle. And he's really not. And you think that was the first moment in any Zelda game ever for me where I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
It's in 5 seconds, this cutscene's ending, and I do not know what I'm gonna do.
Right.
And then you panic and run around and try to figure it out. And so for me, I do think that needs to be on the list as a definitive, epic, put a pin in it. The course of Zelda changed a little bit with that boss fight.
Yes.
And it changed naturally, but that is really a moment that I think needs to be recognized.
Incredible. I have to admit, I would have put that on my list, but I had a feeling that one of you two might have put that on yours. So I was like, you know what, I'll save it. But it's so incredible.
I think the cinematography really helps it too, because like you just get down from like this towers like falling, and it like pummels into like this like, you know, just flat emptiness, and you're like, there's a second where you both breathe, you and Zelda breathe, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then he like comes out of the rubble, and he's like floating, and he like pulls. I love it when Ganondorf just absolutely loses it and is like, I'm just gonna consume all power to kill you.
Yeah.
And he does that a few times, and like where he does that and then he turns into this beast. It's just so cool. Yeah,
and there's even a split second where you kind of only see the glowing eyes, and then the lightning cracks and you actually see the silhouette, and you're like, that looks pig-like, but it also looks like a demon, and also like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
You know, there's a little moment that sells it too, that just makes it so good, and that's like, every boss that you face in this game has like a little subtitle or like a little title card where it's like Scourge of Jabu Jabu, whatever, like the Demon King Ganondorf. And this one, it's just Ganon,
just
Ganon, Ganon. Like this, it seems like that just makes it to me seem like, oh man, like this is a big deal here, and this is and it's like the character model is so awesome, and like thank goodness they didn't make him blue, and they you know, he's not kind of this chubby pig anymore. He's like this wicked monster. And it's so good.
And you know, in these days when you play it, you can get it done in a couple seconds sometimes.
Yeah.
But as a kid, as a 10-year-old or whatever age I was, 14-year-old, because I was in high school. But anyway, you're running around for 5-10 minutes. You don't know when you don't know the puzzle yet of it and where to hit and what to do. You are just fighting for your life, and you're getting hit and you're trying to figure it out. And anyways, it was so
Allison
cool.
at the Zelda Ninja Marathon last year.
Whoa, no, we don't need
What
to
happened?
talk
What
about
happened?
that. I died to Ganon twice.
Oh,
And I was the last one to finish, and it's really embarrassing.
I think
too,
I just
'cause
squeaked by.
my brother like hopped in the chat and he donated some money, and he's like, yeah, go Allison, and then I died, and I was like, oh my god.
he distracted you.
And then Andy, he was like right behind me, and he turned to me and he's like, I'm sorry, I have to do this, because we were neck and neck the whole time, so we didn't know who was gonna win, and he's like, I love you. And then he like
the final
Finished
shot.
it off. Yeah.
Like HBK to Ric Flair. Yeah. So no, it's such a good moment.
It is a good moment. I got to experience it 3 times last year, so yay.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, so I think we'll just do a quick hot lap of our honorable mentions, but in no particular note. You know, honestly, there isn't a singular one or a singular number 5 or a singular number 6, because we all just picked 3. But why don't we go bottom to top here? Let's just recap our list of 12.
All right, and like I said, I jotted these down really fast, so if you want to talk more about it, go for it. Ganon, End of Ocarina of Time.
We're going top to bottom. Okay, let's do it.
Sorry.
Let's build up.
Top.
Oh, I kind of gave myself the final spot by accident by going around this way. It doesn't really matter. There's no exact thing. Let's just go for
All
it.
right.
Ganon is one of them.
Losing your hearts and stuff at the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom. Sheik's reveal.
Yeah.
A Link to the Past, pulling the Master Sword. Twilight Fossil Stalwart, I think is what you called it.
The Twilight Fossil Stalwart. It's Stalwart.
Okay.
It's a big skeleton.
Age of Calamity, fighting alongside the Knights. Wind Waker, Link, flipping and slamming Ganondorf at the boss fight. Skyward Sword, Impa blocks Skiram. Diving down at the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom. The Blood Moon Rise, first time you see it. The specific air dungeon boss fight.
Yeah.
And the monk
Monk Maz Kashyyyk.
Guys,
Last
this
Kashima
list is
fight.
great. This list is all over the place. I love it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
It's eclectic. It's good.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, well, let's go around one more time. If anybody has honorable mentions, you can, like, Andy, if you've got a few, let's just do all of them real quick. Why don't you just mention them? I've got like 3 here.
Yeah, I've got 4. So I would say this is the meta one that I was talking about, but I'll never forget watching the 2017 Switch trailer for Breath of the Wild. Like the last trailer where like that epic music, that epic and this one meant so much to me because it was like, you know, coming out of the darkest days of the Wii U where like Nintendo's future was kind of like murky at this point, and it's like this game kind of needed to hit, and a lot was riding on this, like everything was riding on this, and this last trailer, and there's a specific moment towards the end where there's this really quick shot where the Zelda theme kicks in and Link is riding Epona, and it's so awesome.
Yes.
So if we were talking like outside of the game moment, this would have been number 1.
Yeah.
But I think it's great. I love the King Bulbin boss fight from Twilight Princess because you fight him a couple times. First of all, you fight him on the bridge. You're on the bridge rather. You're jousting and you knock him off. You fight him again. He lights the barn on fire. And then the third time you fight him in Hyrule Castle, and he kind of has this character arc where he's like, you know what, you're strong and I respect you. Like we're good. And I was like, yes, all right, great. I think
and having a character that's kind of hunting you down a little bit narratively. Yeah, it's cool.
It's just kind of like a nice little character arc for this throwaway character. I do think, spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom,
it's all good,
but there is a place in the depths called the Gleeok Den, and as you might imagine, there is a Gleeok there, and he is infused with gloom, and that fight was awesome.
Wow.
And I had a wild pick here, but in the Majestic spin-off game, freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land, you are fighting a boss whose name is Uncle Rupee, and he's like the manifestation of greed, and he's modeled after Hugh Hefner, and each time you feed him more rupees, he turns into this like more rich and lavish kind of guy, and eventually he almost looks like Andros from Star Fox, and you're fighting him and shooting rupees at him, and it's just the most wild like thing you've ever seen, and it's so awesome.
It does technically sound epic. Yeah.
I had to sneak that in there somehow.
I love it.
Uncle Rupee.
I love it. Al, any honorable mentions at all?
I had too many, but there's one that's just like been sitting in the back of my mind as we have been talking, and then like it's Tears of the Kingdom related, but it's not story related. It's fight related. So when you fight Ganondorf at the end, there was this moment where I lost my ever-living mind because one of Link's like most famous moves is the perfect dodge, and when you dodge, you like backflip and you do like slow-mo. Well, there's a moment, there's several, but the first moment where I swung my sword at Ganondorf and he does a perfect dodge. And my brother and I were like, oh my God!
I cannot wait to see that.
You go to Flurry Rush, you're like, I got you. And
yeah,
he's
exactly.
Like, no way.
And the only way it could be even more epic if he did Flurry Rush you, he does not. But like that would just make like cherry on the cake. It was so good because it made me feel like I've met my match. Like this is it, and it was so good. I was screaming.
Oh,
That's
I'm
cool.
so excited for it.
That's cool. Any for you, Katie? Unless you
no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I had 2. My first one is getting to drive and fire the Guardians in Age of Calamity because you get to drive them all around. I think that's kind of fun and cool.
Yeah.
And then my second one was the specific memory that you get in Breath of the Wild where you see Link getting taken out by the Guardians. Because I think that was a really cool moment of like this character that I play as. I'm like, no one can beat me. Seeing Link quite literally die before getting brought back. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, wow. So I got 3 of them real quick here. One, the reason this one's an honorable mention is because it's kind of a mini version of the Ganon fight in Ocarina. But I said like I had that moment with Ganon of I love it when a boss gives you that like I really don't know what I'm going to do next feeling. And the first time I technically felt that was King Dodongo, in the early parts of, it's such an easy little boss battle fight. But that first time where the point of view is coming at Link, and then we switch back, and there's a huge roar. As an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do any of this. And then pretty quickly you start finding the patterns. But that little cutscene was one of them. I actually think that the Ganondorf fight at the end of Twilight Princess is quite good. There's a good build-up. There's many stages and layers. But the one thing I love about that one, it's almost the opposite of Ocarina of Time. Instead of going from Ganondorf to Beast Ganon or whatever, we actually experience a B scan, and it all kind of comes down to just a fight, which sounds like kind of is what happens in Tears of the Kingdom here a little bit. Like it might just be mano a mano at a certain point anyway. So I thought that was kind of epic too. And you got the flames and all that kind of stuff. And then lastly, I don't know. This is a nice little sprinkle on the cupcake. But we have to think about the context. Before any 3D Zelda game ever came out ever, and it was Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2, A Link to the Past, and Link's Awakening. I remember playing Link's Awakening on Game Boy, and with those limited graphics, the first time that the game felt big for me was going up to the egg. Just a couple scrolls. Yeah. It's like only 1 or 2 scrolls, and you see it, and you see the horizon. And I was like, oh, there are larger things afoot here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it was kind of in the context of a teeny tiny little game. It was epic,
Yeah.
Link's Awakening is one of my favorite Zelda games, but it's almost too like melancholy for me to put. And I felt the same way about Majora's Mask, where I was like trying to think of some moments from those games. I was like, these almost make me sad in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like there's it's like what's epic, because like there's plenty of moments in Majora's Mask that are impactful.
Yes.
But like, are you like yeah? You know what I mean?
We in fact we struggled with that because we did a top 10s emotional episode for our Patreon, and we were like, there's too many in Majora's Mask. We only have to pick like one.
Yeah.
So like, is the moon crashing epic?
Yeah,
kind of like, but it's also kind of sad. So it's like
exactly.
No, I think two are the same. That's why I'm like, when Link gets killed, when Link does it.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, that was a blast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's let you, even though apparently, most of our listeners also listen to the Zeldacast anyway, why don't you shout out your show again and let people know where they can find you?
It's all you, Al.
No, I can't do it.
We were joking off mic. Al and I were joking off mic about how actual outros are actually kind of awkward for us.
I can't do outros to save my life.
All right. Yeah, you can check us out over at the Zeldacast. We are, we're obviously part of Zelda Dungeon, so if you want to join our Discord or check out zeldadungeon.net, you'll be able to find us pretty easily. You can check us out over on Twitter at the Zeldacast. I'm at Spiteri316. Al is at Allison Aletha. And wherever you get your podcast, you can check us out. Like, subscribe, recommend to that Zelda fan in your life. And, we love those 5-star reviews. We also have a Patreon, as Al was just alluding to as well. It's very new. So maybe we'll get some pointers from you. But we're all over the place.
Say hi to our magical sword people.
Woo!
Hey guys, they've been hanging out with us.
So just type in the Zeldacast. We're not hard to find. We usually live stream our shows every Sunday around.
That's cool.
Yeah, we fool around for a little bit on Twitch. We usually have a little technical difficulties, maybe some coffee talk until we get going. So that's usually around 2:00 Eastern, I want to say.
That's
on
fun.
Sundays.
I listen to you on just like Apple Podcasts, but
Yeah.
I do catch some YouTube clips. I didn't know you streamed. That's kind of neat. Maybe I'll try to check in once in a while if I'm working at the right time and throw it on a second monitor.
Sometimes it's fun to just see the faces as well. So we do that, and then we're all over Zelda Dungeon, and we're gonna be part of the marathon here still for a couple days. So lots of places you can check us out.
Kady and I sadly leave tomorrow. We stayed here absolutely as long as we could, of which the amount of days that I could ask off work and not be fired.
Yeah.
So we're here for the 3 days. But it'll be sad for us to go. We can't wait to keep watching the marathon. Of course, our listeners are hearing this a couple weeks after the marathons happen. Hopefully they're watching. Hopefully they watched a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
We've been tweeting about it a lot and all of that. It's fun to share. So grateful to be invited. So happy to see the two of you again. I feel like this is probably becoming an annual thing, and even if there's a reason where it isn't, we still got to find a way to make sure that we get together once a year at least or something.
I think I can safely say that it's like I said yesterday, we kind of joked like it's like the mafia. Like once you're part of the family, you can't get out.
Well, we're having the time of our lives here, and it's an absolute blast. And so, just real quick with Another Zelda Podcast, you can find us at anotherzeldapodcast.com, where you can read all of our blog posts. You can check out some older episodes. You could go find our conversation from a year ago if you haven't already listened to it. I think that one literally says the Zeldacast in the title, by the way.
Nice.
Hanging out with the Zeldacast or something like that. Or you can go to our Instagram, which is Another Zelda Pod. Remember the thing where I said how outros are actually difficult for me, Al? And you can find us on Twitter at Another Zelda Podcast and find us on all the major podcast things. There it is. Really, at the end of the day, just Google Another Zelda Podcast and you will find some things. Kady, I kind of skipped you, I just realized. Where can people find you?
You can find me at my website, kadyroberts.com, or you can find me on Instagram at mind_of_kady.
Excellent. I'm Raptor Paint at Instagram and Twitter. There it all is. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for our patrons for hanging out with us here and watching the show. And guys, let's get back to the marathon, I guess.
Heck
Huh?
yeah,
Let's do it.
Yeah.